Hello students, in the previous class we have started with human reproduction. The first part includes the male reproductive system, that already we have covered it. The second part is regarding the female reproductive system. So let's study the female reproductive system in this class. In contrast with the male reproductive system has primary sex organs, secondary sex organs, as well as accessory glands. Similarly, in the female reproductive system, we come across the same terms: primary sex organs, secondary sex organs, and accessory glands. So let's see them one by one. The first one is a primary sex organ. Second one is a secondary sex organ. And third one includes accessory ducts or accessory glands. Now, if we look at the primary sex organs are those that produces gametes. Secondary sex organs are those which do not produce gametes, but they are involved in transferring the gametes. And accessory glands are those that also helps during the process of reproduction. Now, in the female reproductive system, the primary sex organs are a pair of ovaries. A pair of ovaries are present in the female reproductive system. Secondary sex organs, it includes certain structures, the structures that arise from the ovary, that includes oviduct. This oviduct is also called as a fallopian tube. Then uterus, cervix, and vagina. Along with this, it also has a external genitalia. External genitalia. This external genitalia is also called as a vulva in the female reproductive system. Then accessory glands, it includes Bartholin glands. It includes Bartholin glands and mammary glands. So all these are the various structures present in the female reproductive system. Now let's look at the diagrammatic representation of the female reproductive system and study these all parts one after the other. Now in the female reproductive system, if we look at its structure, this female reproductive system includes various parts. And in these parts, it has different labelings here. So here we observe a tube like structure. Now this female reproductive system consists of long arm like structure, we call them as a fallopian tube also. Okay, now at these fallopian tubes, here we observe finger-like structures. Now along with that, here we have a structure which is called as an ovary, and this ovary is attached to the wall of the uterus with the help of a ligament. This is the ovary here. So a pair of ovaries are present here in the female reproductive system, the pelvic region. And here we find the wall in the uterus. Okay. Now if we look at these structures, this is, let's look at the labelings here. This is the ovary, and here we find the ligament. Ligament is a structure that holds the ovary, where the ovary joins to the outer part of the uterus. Then these are called as a fembrae, and this is the first part of the fallopian tube. This part is called as a infundibulum. Second part is called as a ampulla, and this third part is called as the isthmus. So all these three parts together, this forms the fallopian tube. And this fallopian tube is also called as a oviduct. As we came across here, fallopian tube is also called as a oviduct. This part is a uterine fundus. And if we look at the uterus, this part is the uterus. It consists of an inner part is a myometrium. Then middle part is this is endometrium. Middle part is myometrium. And the outer part is a perimetrium. Okay. So these are the parts in the uterus. Now this part we call it as a uterus. And the next part, here we have the cervix, and the canal that we observe here, this is the cervical canal, and this part is a vagina. So this is regarding the female reproductive system. Now if we look at each of these parts one by one, look at the first part, primary sex organ, a pair of ovaries. Now where exactly the location of the female reproductive system is present? It is in the lower abdomen, in the pelvic region, and these ovaries, a pair of ovaries are there. And if we look at these ovaries, the ovary measures around its diameter. It is around 2 to 3 centimeter in its length. The length varies from 2 to 3 centimeter. Now these ovary, as they are present in the abdominal region, outside the uterus and they are attached to the uterus on the outer part with the help of a ligament. So this is the ligament on the outer part of the uterus. They are attached with the ligament. Then this ovary, it is majorly divided into the outer epithelium and the stromal part. Outer epithelium and the stromal part. Now if we look at the stroma is divided into two parts in the ovary. The outer part is called as cortex and the middle part is called as a medulla. So stromal cortex and stromal medulla. So inside the ovary, now suppose if we take this as an ovary, in this ovary we can easily distinguish. This is the ovary. Again, regarding the structure of the ovary, we will come across its structure in the later classes also. Here the outer part is called as a cortex and inner part is called as a medulla. And the cortex is lined by epithelial cells, where we call them as a germinal epithelium also. Germ cells are there that will produce the ovum. So ovary is a structure in which egg or ovum is produced and which develops from certain follicles. We call them as primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle, and finally it matures into graphene follicle that holds a functional ovum here. And this ovum is released exactly on the 14th day of menstrual cycle. So how exactly it is released? Which are the hormones that are responsible for this? That part we'll study it in the later classes during the menstrual cycle. Now look at the part of the ovary. Ovary, it measures around 2 to 3 centimeters in its length. Almost it is divided into outer epithelium and the stromal part. The stroma is divided into outer cortex and inner medulla. So cortex is lined by germinal epithelial cells from which the follicles develop to form into a matured follicle called as a graphene follicle, and from the graphene follicle a functional ovum is released out. A functional ovum is released out exactly on the 14th day of menstrual cycle, and the process is called as a ovulation, a release of egg from the graphene follicle. Okay, this is regarding the structure of the ovary. So what is the function of the ovary? Ovary produces ovum, or we also call it as an egg. Along with that, ovary also produces female sex hormones called as estrogen and progesterone. And these two hormones, they are also called as female sex hormones. Then the function of the estrogen is as in relation with the testosterone present in the males. The function of the estrogen is this estrogen is responsible for the secondary sexual characters in the female, like development of the breast, development of the female reproductive system, then body current. So body counter is little bit rounded, and development of thick pelvis and subcutaneous fat also. So that is regarding the part of estrogen hormone, function of the estrogen hormone. If we look at the function of the progesterone, progesterone is called as a pregnancy maintaining hormone because that is produced during the period of gestation or pregnancy. Now, this completes the part of the ovary, and the ovary is supplied with the blood vessels also. Okay. Then after the ovary, let's move on to the next part. Next part is regarding the fallopian tube, oviduct. Why we call it as a oviduct? Because ovum passes through this duct and hence it is termed as a oviduct. Now this fallopian tube is divided into three parts. The first part of the fallopian tube, we call it as an infundibulum. Second part or upper part is ampulla, and the last part or the end part is called as a isthmus. So the lower part is infundibulum, second ampulla, third one is isthmus. All these three parts are of fallopian tube or oviduct. Now infundibulum consists of finger-like projections. So almost it appears like finger-like projections. These finger-like projections are called as fimbriae. Then what is the function of these fimbriae? The function of the fimbriae is it collects the ovum after ovulation. Means when the egg is released from the Graafian follicle, egg has to be collected by someone. So it is collected by these finger-like projections. So almost as it consists of the smooth muscles, it will be moving involuntarily and it collects the ovum so that the ovum can enter into the fallopian tube. Then ovum enters into the fallopian tube to reach the uterus. So this is regarding the function of the fimbriae as well as the fallopian tube. And now remember, fallopian tube is the structure in which the process of fertilization occurs in the female reproductive system. That means fusion of ovum and fusion of ovum along with the sperms occurs in the fallopian tube. Generally it is in the upper part of the fallopian tube. Again we'll come across these parts during the process of fertilization. Then fallopian tube will lead into a pear-shaped structure, which is a inverted pear-like structure, which is also called as uterus. Uterus is also called as a womb in the female reproductive system. So this uterus is also called as womb. Uterus is also called as a womb in the female reproductive system. Now this uterus consists of an inner layer called as a endometrium, middle layer called as a myometrium, outer layer called as a perimetrium. Perimetrium is a thin wall. Myometrium, as the name says, myo meaning muscle. It is made up of muscle. Mainly it is made up of smooth muscles. Inner layer is called as endometrium. This is glandular. It consists of glandular cells. Now this endometrium, it sheds every month, releasing with the blood, and hence the process is called as a menstruation or the menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle occurs due to shedding or removal of the endometrial wall. So this is present in the uterus of the female reproductive system. Now, what is the major function of the uterus? As we call uterus as womb, this is the place where implantation occurs, embedding of the fetus occurs or in the embryo occurs, and the embryo develops in the womb of the mother. So this is the uterus where exactly the gestation period or the pregnancy is carried out, and the attachment takes place in the wall of endometrium. Okay. Then next part of the uterus is a cervix. Cervix is a narrow passage. Cervix is a narrow passage that arises from the uterus. This cervix consists of a canal-like structure which is called as a cervical canal. And this cervical canal opens into an outer structure called as a vagina. And this vagina is a female copulatory structure or the female reproductive structure that is involved in sexual intercourse or coitus process. Now, cervix along with the vagina together forms the birth canal. Cervix along with the vagina together forms the birth canal. Okay. Then exterior to the vagina we have external, female external characters, or we also call them as a female external genitalia. And regarding the female external genitalia, we'll discuss it. Okay. And after completion of the female reproductive system with all these structures, we'll look at the female external genitalia. Then what does the female external genitalia consist of, and what are the parts of the female external genitalia in the female reproductive system? So let's look at these female external genitalia. As already we discussed, this female external genitalia is also called as a vulva, or it is also called as a vulva. Then what are the parts of it? The parts, it includes labia majora, labia minora, then hymen, clitoris, mons pubis. along with the vaginal orifice. Then if we look at the external genitalia of the female reproductive system, in this external genitalia, it includes all these parts. Okay, in the female external genitalia, here we have mons pubis. This is a clitoris. This is a urethral meatus. This is a vaginal orifice. This is the anus. Then this outer part is a labia majora. Inner part is a labia minora. Okay, along with that a structure in between these two which is also called as a vestibule. Okay, now this is regarding the female external genitalia, which is also called as a vulva. Then what are the parts of it? Now on the upper part of the female external genitalia, we have mons pubis, that is made up of a fatty tissue, and it also consists of pubic hairs. Then we have a larger or broader lip-like structure which is called as a labia majora, and inside this we have a smaller lip-like structure called as a labia minora. So this labia minora, almost on its anterior part or the upper part, it forms into a tiny finger-like projection which is called as a clitoris. Then inside the labia minora, we have an opening called as a urethral opening, or it is also called as a urethral meatus, the opening of the urethra. Because in the female reproductive system, the urethral opening and the vaginal opening are different. Then in between the region of the vaginal opening and the urethral opening, there is a region called as a vestibule. Then this vaginal orifice or opening of the vagina is called as a vaginal orifice. It consists of a membranous structure which is also called as a hymen. So hymen is a thin membrane which is present at the opening of the vagina, and that hymen is usually torn during the first coitus, or it can be torn by horse riding also, by the cyclist, in the cyclist also. That means hymen does not give the evidence for the virginity. So this is regarding the part. And this female external genitalia, what exactly is present here is, in this vaginal or opening of the vagina, where we call it as a vaginal orifice, in the opening of vagina there are certain glands which are located here. In the opening of the vagina, on its interior part, there are certain glands. Now these glands are called as a Bartholin glands. They are called as a Bartholin's glands. Now this Bartholin gland, this is exactly similar to that of the Cowper's gland in male reproductive system. Remember, the function of the Cowper's gland is to produce certain fluids that lubricates during sexual intercourse. Similarly, in the female reproductive system also, Bartholin gland is the accessory gland that is present in the vaginal orifice or in the opening of the vagina, that produces certain fluids that lubricates the vagina during sexual intercourse. Okay, so this is one accessory gland. Along with the Bartholin gland, there is one more accessory gland where we call them as a mammary glands or milk secreting glands. So regarding the structure of the mammary gland, its function, we'll see it in the next video. Okay, so this completes the part of a female reproductive system and a female external genitalia, also termed as a vulva. Okay, so the further continued part of this is the mammary glands. So continued part of the female reproductive system. So that we'll cover in the next class. Thank you.